Hi, welcome to today's video on optimizing file organization and collaboration using the Google Workspace Part 1. My name's Jared.
And my name's Adam.
And we're both teachers and digital learning advisors for the Department of Education.
During this session, it is a pre-recorded webinar, so it's a bit of a mix of both. So it is pre-recorded. However, we do have someone available on the chat throughout the entire session. So if we talk about a particular aspect or you have a question as we go, feel free to put it in the chat. There's someone manning that chat throughout the whole session. There'll also be links and resources pushed through that location as well. So please do interact with that today, even though this is a pre-recorded session. This session will also be broken up to an on-demand session in the future if you just see a particular part that you want to access or have your staff access as well.
Before we begin, we should do our acknowledgement of country.
Let's acknowledge country, of course. So we recognise the ongoing custodians of the land and waterways where we work and live. We pay respect to elders past and present as ongoing teachers of knowledge, songlines and stories. We strive to ensure that every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learner in New South Wales achieves their potential through education.
Excellent. So today in our series of videos we're putting together, we're focusing on the consolidating stage. But just to recap, we're looking at a progression of skills and abilities using our files that live in the cloud now. So that beginning emerging phase, we focused on schools that were previously heavily reliant on their on-site server and what sort of workflows that they might need to embrace to improve their productivity in a cloud learning environment. Moving on to the developing stage, these are probably schools that during COVID used a little bit of cloud workspace and are familiar with some of those workflows. They're probably using some at a lower scale. And at that point, we look at what can we do for those schools to move them into that consolidating phase by using a few more of those workflows and capitalizing on the benefits of being in the cloud. Today's focus is on the consolidating phase where we find that our school files going to live in multiple spaces. You might have some in Microsoft, some in Google, multiple different Google shared drives, maybe some of the migrated content, maybe external hard drives and USBs. How can we consolidate all those into one easy to manage space? And then the next video will focus on refining those processes, really looking at how we can take ourselves to the next level with some more of the top end options. So today, Adam, we are focusing on the consolidation space.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into the consolidating space, I guess it's good to acknowledge that not everything that we talk about today will be for every staff member all the time. Some of these are kind of a point in time moves. So as Jared talked about, we're trying to consolidate some of the varied spaces where our content lives. That's not going to be an ongoing task forever. Once it's consolidated and once it's all in a nice usable space, I guess that job is kind of done. And that might be done by a particular staff member. It might be done by a bit of a committee or a group of staff that are kind of working on it, but it might not be for everyone. And along with some of the management aspects as well, we're talking about managing permissions and making sure that the right staff have the access to the right content, all the way from our office staff through to casuals and those sorts of things. And that usually does fall on, particular staff members, maybe the office, maybe a computer coordinator. So some aspects will be for particular staff, but then we are going to dive into, Google Classroom and how to get the most out of that. And that I think is going to be for all classroom teachers, and good for other staff to know how that operates as well and how that can be useful for our support staff or staff that are teaching across grades and across stages, RFF, library, those who aren't kind of on class in a particular room, or even our high school teachers that are going to be teaching across varied grades and being able to manage all those students and all that content in a really efficient way. So let's dive in and have a look.
Yeah, let's have a look at the first step we're going to do is having a look at how permissions work in Google Shared Drives and what sort of different levels of access. So I am going to probably start by looking at the manage access options, I think. Or should we start looking at MMA maybe?
Yeah, I guess we're looking at managing the content from a department, uniform or department systems, and that is the Manage My Access. So if we go maybe to the tab just to the left, just to show everyone where it sits within our staff portal. So you can see this is our regular staff portal, and Jared's got the cursor there. We've got Manage My Access and Manage Staff Access. So those two tools, I guess, work together. They are connected. If you trigger something in Manage My Access, which is me as a personal staff member, I would like to request access to something. That then triggers the Manage Staff Access, which is used by principals, delegates, those sorts of staff members. Yeah, it could be the same as well. So they are connected in that particular way. But we'll dive in and have a look at it. Myself as a staff member, I'm missing some access for, say, teacher drive, or I'm doing higher duties for the week and I need access to an executive drive or that kind of thing, I want to request some higher access.
So we are also focusing on those migrated spaces that happen with the FAA file migration. And by making changes here, we'll change the different spaces that we can see. So here within Manage My Access, we need to, first of all, you need to search up your school.
On the correct location.
So this is from you as a personal staff member requesting access. What we're looking for by scrolling down, we're looking at the one here that says school resources. And so once we found that, we go across. At the moment, there is no access to this school that we've chosen at random. And we click on the little pen and it brings up our options of what we can check. So by ticking a box, it will send a request to the principal delegate to approve. Some of these names will change moving forward. These names will change a little bit more to align what they do. For now, if you want standard teacher access, you are ticking the other staff group box. But then if you're going into higher duties, maybe relieving sub-exec for whatever period of time, sometimes it takes a little bit for the HR records to catch up. So you can tick this in the short term or have request that for your principal to authenticate.
Absolutely. And I guess you can already see if it's something that you've used before, something you're familiar with. You might even see a couple of tick boxes there that you haven't seen before. So at the top there, underneath access permission, we've got an additional team owner. So that's being able to add the flexibility of giving someone ownership of a Microsoft team, if you are having Microsoft Teams, without giving that file access. You've also got that short-term casual, which is a nice space that's available for, I guess, those transient casual staff that are in and out of our school. They're not our everyday casual. They're coming to school every single day. And it gives them a space for staff and those day-to-day casuals to have a kind of a meeting point where files can live and easily accessible by everyone.
Absolutely. So you would hit that send request and we'll jump over to a PDF look at what that looks like from an MSA. This is what your principal would see. They would go to their essentials, find the manage staff access, and you'll see this pending request. So if I scroll down here, it's a little bit more obvious. Principal just needs to tick or cross whether they accept your request. And that change is pretty much immediate, and you should then have access to what you need.
Perfect. So that's, I guess, using department processes through the MSA and MMA kind of features. Within Google, they've done some really great work, and they've actually pulled the Active Directory groups, or those groups that the Manage My Access or Manage Staff Access pull on, to actually populate the Google Drive or the Google Shared Drive space. So really handy that you can dive in here and actually utilize that. So if we do have a quick look, and I'll jump into, say, the teacher space here. This is our teacher drive. We'll click on the three dots and we'll have a look and view the members. So another good thing to point out is, depending on your level of access, depends on what you can and can't do within a particular shared drive. So you can see you've got some individuals here, but we've actually got entire groups of staff. So we've got this school code here, and it actually says all teachers. So that's a school code, and all teachers at the school are content managers of this particular space. So if I was a manager of this particular team, which I'm not, I'd be able to go in and I can modify or add particular groups. So from that office group, or it could be the teacher group, it could be an executive group. So you just simply type in that school code, and we'll do a little bit of a demo on how that works a little bit later. But that's, I guess, how you can also just see who and what and the access, I guess, that's built into that. By default, all staff members are granted just that content manager level. So the manager level is the very highest level within Google, and I guess it's just good to be aware of that language. The manager level is that highest level where you basically have full control over who can do what within the access. No one in a school currently for the managed spaces has that level of access, simply to prevent accidents, from having people accidentally remove it. And we would love schools to go through that normal kind of process through the Manage My Access and Manage School Access processes as well. So that's how that can work. If you do have your own managed shared drives, things that you have existing, you will be able to have that manager access as well.
100%. And you'll see that same level of access when you go to share a file, whether you're a reviewer, a commenter, a content manager, or a manager. So there's those different levels of
So let's
access.
jump down into one that's not managed. This might be something that you have existing in your school. And we'll just have a little look at that school code. Typing that school code is. So you can see there, because I am a manager at this level, it's different. It says manage members. If we just highlight what it looks like when we went to teacher, it's just a view only. So that's the big difference. That's how you'll know a bit of a key as to what level of access you have as well. So if you're going to manage, I do have the ability to actually change how and where that sits. So if I do type in that school code, I'm going to use 90 9079.
Just take this as a test environment. And it should bring up our what we call our AD groups associated with 9079. So you can see here there's an executive group. Anyone who listed in the HR records as an executive for that school will automatically be added. And the good thing about that is, as staff members come and go from the school, as they get added to that group, they're also automatically added to the team or to the shared drive. And likewise, when they leave, automatically removed, which is a really good feature.
Yeah, live connection there, which is really nice. So it's not a kind of point in time ad, it's the group itself, and anyone who comes into that group is added as well. So you can see I've got teachers, even students. So for most schools that are set up through EMU, I think, or through EARN, they've set their classes properly. You can even type in class groups for primary grades, which is really, really useful. They're definitely working on a bit of an uplift for this in terms of high schools, because we know high schools have their, say, roll class, but that's generally not the class that they're learning in, depending on how you set up how big your high school is. But generally you'll have a roll class, which is fine, but then there are all different classes for English and maths and all your other key learning areas. So there's no way of collecting that information yet. Definitely something that we're working on. But for the primary classroom, you can type in your school code and then class or grade, and it will bring up that collection of students, which is really handy.
Pending so have been added to EARN in that way, and it doesn't happen for every school, but happens for most
schools. So I might add all executive now to that one. I can notify them, so they do get like a nice little email to say you've been added to this group.
Yep.
Nice little kind of reminder, I guess, just in case they are unsure. And you also can set the level. So whether they're a viewer, commenter, contributor, and there's that manager level is the highest level. Most people only need that content manager level, which is there. And I can send that off. I won't notify anyone for that one. And we'll just click on share. And then I've added that whole group, and that access has been updated. So that's a way to manage, I guess, your shared drives that sit separate to those migrated drives as well.
Absolutely, and it's a nice, easy change. It's a nice, quick change rather than have to. You might not want to move all your stuff. Maybe you want to take what has been migrated, and you might want to leave that as an archive, or vice versa. If you've created a space that doesn't really get used anymore, you can make that an archive. And then transfer it over. But using those AD groups is a really easy way to update who can and can't access.
Now, I guess, Jared, moving forward, some schools might have quite a lot of shared drives, quite legacy shared drives. There might have been a shared drive for every single stage or every grade in the school. Every faculty might have their shared drives, and the school's thinking, well, we've just got too many. We need to actually start to consolidate and remove or delete some of those shared drives. So rather than utilizing the AD groups, which are excellent, maybe we do want to move some of that content and then delete those.
If it was just one main, you've got your migrated and you've had one you've always used, sometimes it's good just to update it. But it's probably, exactly what Adam said. It's a really good idea. Let's consolidate them together so everything is at one place. Why? So you don't have a separate permission set for every shared drive. One shared drive, one set of permissions, really easy to manage.
Perfect. So let's have a look at what that process might look like. So you might have a grade where, or a particular stage, the stage one stuff. At stage one, they've started up, and maybe they were Google pioneers in the school, and they started up really early, and now the rest of the school's caught up. But we actually want to keep that, that shared drive that was just for stage one. We want to move that into something like our whole school. So it might be something like a central school, or just a palm tree school as our example school. And we actually want to move that into the shared drive. There's no kind of merge shared drives button. That kind of doesn't exist, but there is a way to move that content or copy it as well. Before doing this,
we probably should need to have a conversation with everyone in the school. Everyone needs to be on the same page, and you need to really communicate that this change is happening. You don't want people to be surprised that they can't, or they start saving somewhere after you've moved files and things of that nature. So make sure the timeline is well communicated, just like we did in the FAA migration. You knew we had a date to work towards. And on that date, you're going to want to set that space. You want to set all members to view only. So if they need to, they can grab a file, but they can't update what's there. So we've clicked here on Manage Members to this site for the old space, and we're going to set each of these groups. So all the 9079 teachers are going to be sent to viewer, and we're also going to set the executive to also being a viewer. This way they can still see, but not change. And it's at this point that us logged in here as Teacher 9068, we're set to manager. We're going to make this change from this point on. You want to do it in a relatively quick manner. So right now, no one can make changes. What's the next step?
So next step is we want to actually open up that drive and have a little bit of a look. We've got a whole range of content in here. Not very well folderized, I can see. So we probably tidy that up. There might be some old content that we might want to delete before we move it across, because often there's point in time content that's definitely important at the time.
Yes.
But then maybe 1 year on, you go, actually, that was just something we needed at that time. We don't need it anymore.
Don't
So
need it
deleting that, but there's definitely things that we want to keep. So we can come into here. You can change the view up the top. So for moving lots of content, this is a nice interface for me to get a nice little thumbnail and actually see the content, which is great. But for moving content, I might want to pop up here to this right-hand side and actually change it to a bit of a list view. So I can just see a nice easy list of all the content. Up the top, this is just a suggested. This is the same content. This is just Google suggesting these are the latest information that you've accessed, and you might want to access it. So don't get too, I guess, confused with this top level. This is just Google's suggestion of what you might want to open. This is actually all the content sitting underneath. So if I do click on that top folder, I'm going to hold down the Shift button on my keyboard, and I'm going to click on the bottom folder there. So it'll actually select all the information or all the files or folders there. And then I'll simply right click, and that gives me my options. The one we're looking for is move. So we are physically going to move the content from this shared drive to the other shared drive. It's not going to make a copy of it. It's going to move that content from here. So this shared drive will end up being empty once we've moved it across.
Well, is there important permission setting we need to be able to go from one shared drive to another?
Absolutely.
That's probably a hurdle that a lot of schools might bump into at this stage.
Definitely. So I've clicked on move. It's going to open up our interface, and you'll see a little bit of a difference, exactly what Jared is calling out. So it's showing me, normally Google would say, oh, you probably want to move things within your shared drive, from one location in your shared drive to another location in your shared drive. That's where it starts you. But we actually want to move to a separate shared drive altogether. So what we need to look for is all our locations, which is 3 tabs across from the suggested. Again, Google trying to be helpful by suggesting where we might want to go. So we go to all our locations. It offers a My Drive, which is fine. We don't want to move the shared content to My Drive. We actually want to move it to another shared drive. So we'll click on that one. And exactly what Jared was talking about, we've got these school codes in our migrated content, but they're all grayed out. And the reason they're grayed out is because as we called out before, no teacher in your school is actually granted that highest level of access, that manager access. And you need manager access of both shared drives
source and location
in order to move. Source, where you're moving things from, the shared drive, and where you're moving things to, the other shared drive. You need manager access to both. So what that means is that the shared drives that your school has created themselves, that's really easy. You can go in and manage that permissioning, which is great. For the shared drives that have been migrated for you, that's going to need to be an EdConnect ticket or an email to school's digital strategy to actually gain that higher level access. And it'll be for a period of time.
Temporary
so
access.
You only need, I guess the movement of this content is a one-time action, and you won't need to move a whole lot of content from one shared drive to another shared drive at a later date.
So I've just done a little edit in the background just for, let's say you've said ticket. So let's just hit cancel and do go to move again. Hopefully it updates quick enough in the background. I went into teacher, I added 9068 as a manager. So now when we go to all locations, shared drives, teacher, hopefully, there it is. Their teacher's no longer grayed out.
Perfect.
And we can go from manager to manager to move our content across.
And once you've logged that ticket, I guess through EdConnect, it's a pretty quick process for it to happen, and a quick update because everything is online and through the cloud. Doesn't need to wait to communicate with anything actually at your school site. It's all stored in the background, so you'll get that access fairly quick. And they'll contact you and let you know the shut-off date of when your access will revert. If you need to do it again, just do the same process again. But like we said, it's usually a one-off. So I can now click on that teacher drive because I've been granted that access, which is great. I can choose where I want that content to go. So it might be, if this was the current date, it might be into the teaching and learning because I'm moving stage 1 content into here. Now I've got a stage 1 folder already in there, which is great. So I do want this to go into that existing stage 1 folder. And then it might be, I might create a new folder from down here for it to live in, which is great. And I might call it the stage 1 stuff so that everyone knows that's what it was called. Now I've got it in there, and I might even put from old drive in the short term, just so everyone knows this is the stuff that got moved across, and then slowly it'll probably filter into your current structure. And we'll go into a bit of a structure setup a little bit later.
You might want to disseminate that into a nicer structure, and we'll go over some suggestions.
So I'm going to create that folder
and then
on the spot.
And we'll hit move because there's nothing in there.
We'll hit move. Then it's going to change the ownership to a shared drive. So some of the content that's being moved from one shared drive to another, it's just letting me know that some of that permissioning is going to change because there's different memberships and managers of the 2 different shared drives. So you just click, just acknowledge, I guess that's the fact. and it's going to move everything out of this stage 1. You can see it's gone.
There it is, gone.
And there's nothing left in there now.
So we should be able to go over our shared drive and have a look to see where it
absolutely
came in.
We went into
teacher.
We popped it into teaching and learning.
Stage 1.
Stage 1.
There it is there, stage 1 stuff from old drive.
And open that up. And everything is there and moved, which is great. So it moved all the Microsoft kind of content, Word documents, things, all of our links. There was Google Docs in there. There's a whole folder for someone in there. So all that content is now moved and it's sitting within that managed space. And, you know, really accessible, not another shared drive to go to. It's just a little bit deeper within our folder structure.
There we go, just like EdConnect, that is now reverted back to Content Manager.
Perfect.
So it is a point in time. You probably get a week or 2 to make that move. You probably want to do it sooner rather than later to minimize any sort of disruption in the school, especially if it's a heavily utilized space.
So that's moving, I guess, Jared, from we might have a range of shared drives. We just want to consolidate those fairly easy. Just that permissioning is probably the only hurdle that schools might come across.
Yes.
But it's all within Google. We're in the browser the whole time, which is excellent. But I guess some schools might have dabbled in something like Microsoft Teams or even SharePoint, and they've got some content there, but they've chosen Google as their migrated location. They want to operate purely out of Google.
Yeah.
Is there a different process for moving?
So go from Microsoft into Google is very doable, and we're going to use the desktop sync client. So you want your sync client turned on for Microsoft, and you want the Google one turned on. You should have the Google one turned on anyway, and if you're not sure, we've covered that in the previous video. So I'm going to open up the File Explorer down the bottom here, and I've got it set to half screen at the moment. I'm going to go to my shared drive. I'm going to go to my destination. I want to move some content into Teacher. And this is a little bit of a different process. We don't need to be a manager to do this, but I'm going to go, this time I'm going to go to the stage 2 folder. And maybe, I'll make a new folder in here now. Whoops, try that again. New folder. And let's just call it copied from MS. That's my destination. I'm going to grab another File Explorer over here, and we're going to go over using my Teams synced space. I'm going to open up, there's the same files. Let's get it from this one. So we've got some folders here that sit in a folder in Microsoft. Same process, top file, hold shift, bottom file. This one is a simple click, drag, and drop. Now, one thing to take note of here, quite often you go, oh, cool, I see the folders have appeared. Does that mean the job's done? Maybe yes, maybe no. The way this works is it draws down the files from the cloud to your computer, and then it re-uploads them back to the cloud into Google. That process can take some time. You want to be on a machine where the sleep function is probably being turned off, you've plugged into power, and all this should proceed relatively without any sort of general massive issues.
Yeah, you can see here as well, I guess, on this side here, you've got these little clouds sitting on these folders. When it's got a cloud, that's generally meaning you're all good. It's up in the cloud, which is great. If it's ever got these little arrows, I guess these little kind of syncing arrows, that usually means it's doing something. It's thinking, it's processing. It might be sending something up, or it might be pulling something down. I guess it's just that transfer of content. So with our Google shared drives, I guess it's always good to double check. Click. You got that little blue cloud just under that Word document. I can see it's got a blue cloud on it. Yeah. It might be thinking because we have a document open that because documents are live in the cloud, it might be constantly updating and having a look. You can see now we've gone back in all blue clouds.
Yep.
If you are someone who just likes to double check, a great thing within Google is to go into the browser where we were before, jump back into the same location and just do a little bit of a cross check. So we're cross checking the syncing clients, but what we can do in Google is actually go in through our browser, because this is purely online. So if it's in here, it's there. It's not drawing it, so it doesn't need to sync with anything. It's just purely in there. So we can go into that folder, we can have a look, and we can see all the folders there. We might even go inside a folder to double check, and we can see all the subfolders are there, and you might even go down to the file level. I don't think there are any files because this was a mock folder structure that we set up, but that, I guess, can give you a bit of peace of mind just to double check that everything's come across, all the clouds are there, and you've got that content in the browser as well.
Yeah, and there has been issues in the past where someone has dragged files over, the folders have appeared, but the files haven't quite made it for whatever reason. Maybe there was some sort of limitation that enacted on that. So just double, triple check. Small batches are probably the way to go. Absolutely. Do a few at a time, make sure it's moved. Do a few more, make sure it's moved. We have seen some people fall into traps, have done a big move, not everything's come across, and it's not great to do.
And I guess to be perfectly honest, Joe, we probably did bad practice there, where we copied every single folder in one go. If these are actually chocker full of folders and files, we might have done the first 4. We might have done collaboration meetings down to homework, and we would have done those 4 folders. Done a quick check, make sure everyone got across. Then we might have done all the KLA folders together, moved them in one big bunch, and then moved whatever was left over. So doing it in little batches just allows everything to work for you, and then you can do some little quick checks just to make sure it is a pretty reliable system, using both the same clients. But this is obviously a one-time move again. You're moving from a Microsoft kind of ecosystem into a Google ecosystem. It's not as smooth because they are 2 separate ecosystems, 2 separate companies that are set up a little bit differently, and we're kind of, I guess, bridging the gap between them.
That's right. And just to take note, like when you do move into a Google space, if you access those files that come across from Microsoft and you use the sync client to open them, they're going to open in the Microsoft software. It's probably good practice moving forward, so you don't have autosave issues, or whether you have formatting issues, is to start using the Google suite of apps to edit and work on those files, because that's going to give you the best consistency moving forward. Stick in the Google land rather than trying to do Microsoft files in a Google space.
So that'll be your
if possible.
Google Docs, Google Slides, and Google Sheets, which is the equivalent of our Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint, and Microsoft Excel. The transition between the two is almost perfect these days. It used to be very, very bad, but they've definitely worked on that and helped make that process smoother.
Absolutely. So I guess the next space to look at is, yes, we're looking to consolidate our files. We're going to look at the process. How do we get files from all these outlying file spaces that schools have created into a single space? But having that single space organized is really the key for success moving forward. So we have some suggested structures that the digital support team have put together. They are quite broad, because to try and give a little bit for everybody. So we have a website, and we'll post this link in the chat. But as we scroll down, there's a few benefits and considerations. And we have folder structure examples. And the content is pretty much the same, just structured slightly different, whether you're a small school, primary, high, or essential school. And we can go and have a look at them. So let's just start with a medium to large primary school, what that structure looks like. So for the most part, you have this, let's say that this is your teacher drive, that migrated content that came over from the server. You might then take an existing drive, bring all your files in together. But rather than have this huge duplication of folders, of endless scrolling, you want to spend some time moving it into a structure. And there's usually 2 parts. You have something that the whole school folder, which is something that affects everybody. Every year, some changes, but minimal changes. In some of these areas, like your DOE policies and scope and sequences, they may be updated from time to time, but for the most part, they affect everybody. They don't change. The second folder underneath that teacher space could be your year-to-year, your annual rollover grade spaces, as well as some other content that is kind of related to a particular calendar year that you might want to archive and access at different points. So starting here in this whole school folder, you probably go into, once we go into that whole school folder, you might be broken down into, you might have a technology support folder where all your how-to stuff goes. Over here, you can see how-to docs, some procedures, things that so people aren't repeating themselves. You have a space for school events and activities. One of the things that I used to always struggle with at my old school, never find a risk assessment, because it was always in a folder called Sarah J, or someone's name, or something that just didn't make sense much at the time. I won't go looking in those folders for things like that. So having a consistent structure that at any sort of school and activity or event, that's the folder I go to find the necessary resources. And then that would break off into another space that's further broken down into those.
Yeah, I guess basically having a look at this is it's making sure that there's a home for everything.
Yes.
Thinking if I create a document and it's related to something, does it have a place to live? And it's about talking to staff and making a bit of a policy behind this structure as well.
Yeah.
And saying, who is allowed to make these top level folders. So once you go into teacher, that I guess is our shared drive, and those top level folders, whole school, teaching and learning. I would say there's only particular people that are allowed to make that a top level folder sitting within the shared drive. Otherwise, you do end up with, a document that should be 3 folders deep, sitting in a really specific place that everyone can find, just sitting randomly at the very top level within the shared drive. So we want to be able to create a structure that people can stick to. We found, I guess, Jared, that even just having this conversation and creating something like this, a document, a reference point, a design structure that people can actually look at and go, oh, I see where I should be able to put that, is really, really helpful. So
especially in the early days after a big reorganization.
Definitely.
This bottom space is annual space. You kind of roll over a bit more often. We'll talk about archiving in a minute, but that teaching and learning broken down into individual stage groups. High school perspective, that might be your different faculties at this point. You may have an area for media where everyone just puts all their photos and digital media that can be accessed by anyone for different purposes at any time, but also then removes it being stored on a private device. But it's about having that consistent structure. So I should be able to go into the stage 3 folder and have the same folders inside that as I would see in the stage 1 folder. It's really easy to navigate. Anyone moving from grade to grade, casual, support staff, everyone can find what they need because it's intuitive and a bit of a roadmap. You may choose to do the years first before the KLAs or vice versa, up to you. And just breaking it down, the consistency is the key here. Archiving your data is also equally as important. You don't want to be scrolling past years and years and years of old stuff to find this year's. So Adam, tell us about the idea of having, now we've only got one Z archive here, but you will have lots of folders throughout the structure called Z archive. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on where you want to archive, and there's definitely flexibility in that. So within this shared drive structure, that teaching and learning folder could be an annual. You might duplicate that and then archive the one before and then start with a fresh year and update all the teacher admin documents. You might have the same stages sitting in there, but update it with current content. We know that once we're in the cloud, we have that idea of version history. So you can just modify the document, update it, and then that old version is still stored there, but you don't need it front and center. So the idea of choosing at what point do you archive, and that's a discussion that you need to have with your school. Yeah. But I guess the idea of having a folder called Z archive, first of all, the letter Z being the last letter of the alphabet, we'll usually shoot that folder to the bottom of the list because generally it will be sorted alphabetically. I know some people do like to sort their things by last modified, which is perfectly fine. But yeah, normally with folders, it does do alphabetically. So Z is just there simply so it sits at the bottom because the archive is important to be able to find, but not important to be at the very front of all the things that you want to access. Yeah,
if I went in here to teaching and learning, and I might not want to archive it at this higher level, I'm probably going to want to archive at a lower level. So I go into stage 1, I've got my folders, term 1, 2021, I would have a Z archive in here in term folders. So I drag term 1 in and I create a new term 1 for that current year. The good thing is last year's content is just one folder away, but I don't have to scroll past 5, 6, 10 years of content to find this year. This year is right on top and the old stuff is a single click away that I might need to make a copy or reuse or whatever it is that I want to do. So it's just really good to be able to have multiple archives throughout your file structure, and consistency is the key. Now, likewise for teaching programs should be accessible by anyone at any time, and having a teaching program as an accessible working document is really key, rather than have that one that that nice flashy one you send off to your supervisor that might not actually be what you did verbatim. There's a lot of double handling. Having one file that can be accessed, or one file space, it can be accessed by any supervisor at any time. It's definitely going to save you time as a teacher. It's going to make you more productive. But yeah, choosing a location somewhere in here, it may sit, you might go into your grade level and you might have a folder here called teaching programs. Really easy to find for anyone at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. Or it could be a whole separate area. So within that teaching and learning, it might be another folder that sits outside of that kind of content. Completely up to you in terms of a school. And I guess have a look at the current structure is a really good idea. Have a look and see what's working. If there are some things that are working really well, keep those processes and just move them into the Google Cloud space. If there are some processes where you think there's got to be a better way, there's got to be a faster way. I seem to be clicking a lot to get to something. Maybe that needs to be shifted from deep in the file structure up to a higher level so it's more accessible and you can access it more efficiently.
Yeah, you want to keep it to no more than 4 clicks. So here's a bit of a high school example where once you get on that whole teacher, rather than having teaching and learning and breaking the grades, and primary could do this as well if they choose, but this is where those faculty folders sit just inside teacher, probably much like they were before in the on-site server. How that might break down, could be broken down by courses, year groups, however it is that the high schools want to structure it. One thing to note, you've obviously got some, you've got your exec principal and office spaces as well. It's healthy for them to have a good structure, especially if you've got staff turnover. Office, usually they're just as bad as teachers at hoarding files, but having a good archiving system for them if you work with your SAS staff. If at any time you would like to use this as a template, if you scroll down on this website, it says click here for an editable folder structure template. Click here, you'll get a copy of this file, and you can then change this to suit what your school has, and then producing this as a map, especially in the early days for teachers to refer to, is a really good idea for productivity.
Perfect. Well, I guess now that we've touched on, I guess we've looked at how we can structure staff and faculty content, making sure it's really easily accessible.
Yep.
We're going to kind of shift gears a little bit and kind of get back into the classroom. So for our classroom teachers, we want to be collaborating with students, or we're sending content out to students. We want to be receiving content from students in the Google Workspace. Google Classroom is the place where that happens.
Yep.
So we're going to have a little bit of a dive into Google Classroom, what the assignments feature looks like. We did touch on it a little bit in the previous video, but that was, I guess, at a very high level. It was just maybe we can push a website to students, or
yep,
we can push out a blank document for them to work on, and using Google Classroom as a bit of a folder repository, I guess, and making it easy for students to send things. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into maybe some of the classroom assignments and what we can create, the content that we can put in there, and then having a look at something that's fairly new in the Google space, which is Google Practice Sets, which is a bit of an interesting one as well.
It's pretty cool. So we're going to create a new assignment now, and like Adam said, you've got a few different options here. We're going to create an assignment, but we're going to add it so there's more content into this space.
So we might be doing a writing task, which might involve, a bit of research. There might be a particular document that you want to work on. You might have an existing document that reminds them of a writing structure, or it might be an example structure that you want them to put in there. So I guess you're building out all the resources that the students are going to need in order to interact with this particular assignment here. So we can put our instructions there. Very much optional. You'll probably put some information in there. For the demo, we won't worry about putting too much in there. Some really great connectors down the bottom, looking for things that are stored in your drive. So my drive, I know lots of teachers use that space to store their own teaching and learning content that's just relevant for them. I guess we do encourage keeping things in the shared drive, because that means it's accessible for everyone. Great collaboration and sharing of resources.
Yeah, if anything ever happens to you as a teacher, someone replacing you for whatever period of time, easy for them to pick up and keep going.
Absolutely. So when I do click on Drive, it takes me to my recent. So it's some of the content that we've obviously been interacting with.
And shared drive there as well.
We can upload something from the computer. So you can use that browse option if you did quickly, download something from the internet, just popped into your downloads, it's there. You don't have to move it. You can just pop it straight in. Go into my drive. This is the content that's just yours as the teacher, or across into our shared drive. So you might have been collaboratively working on some documents or resources for students, saved it in the shared space. You know that you can get into that shared space within the teacher space, and you can come in and grab some content. So I might come in and grab a particular picture that I want, and I'm going to add that in. So straight from our shared drive, they've got that image. That might be a writing prompt. That might be something that you use to kind of use to develop their writing from, or it could be information for them as well. Now, this particular one, I need to think about how I want the students to interact with this resource that I'm attaching to the assignment. Students can view the file. Now, that's perfect, because this is a writing prompt. I don't really need them to add or edit anything, so I can leave that as is. I can click on it and I can choose to change it, which we will for maybe another resource that we want to put in there, but we'll leave that one as a writing prompt for now.
Maybe we'll give them a template that we want to do their writing in.
Absolutely. So we'll click on add, and as we talked about before, we're in the Google ecosystem, so let's use the Google platform to our advantage, I guess. So let's jump in. We're going to get a Google Doc for them to be creating. It's going to create a brand new Google Doc for me, launching it in the browser because it's giving me the option to build this out. So first thing I do want to do is give it a name. Untitled document's not a great
students love a good untitled document.
Students love it, so as teachers, let's set a good example. So this is going to be our writing task. Very creative name for me.
Yeah, writing task. Maybe you might put week 3 or whatever week it happens to be.
Creative writing. I'm not feeling very creative, so I'll come up with a very boring name. That might be our title. Then what we can put in is something like our success criteria.
What's handy in Google, we can set a little ticker box for our success criteria. Students can tick it off when either they feel they do it, or they can share this with a classmate. And as the classmate identifies things that you've done, they can tick it off for you, which could be a handy little task in
Perfect.
So I think it's the little ticks up there.
And I guess really intuitive, really easy to use. Up here, you've got checklist. So I can just turn that into a checklist, very much like turning it into a dot point.
Yeah.
But it is nice and interactive. So students can go down, you can see that turns into it's very small, but it does turn into a little hand. I can tick that or cross that, and it actually crosses it off. So you can get students to actually really interact with that success criteria as they're working through. We'll give a bit of space because this is our template that students are going to work on. We'll give them a bit of space here to do their writing. That's where they might do their writing. We could put a text box in there. We could have the image embedded in here as well. But because we're building out as an assignment, we can actually keep all these bits and pieces separate, which is nice and user-friendly, I guess, for our students.
And another good thing about this, you can reuse this for another task on another day as well.
Absolutely.
Especially the success criteria is similar.
So we can add a whole bunch of points under there, everything that we want the students to focus on.
Yep.
It will leave it at the end for them to go through their writing and actually mark it up and see how they've gone. So I'm just going to close that one now. There's no save button, nothing that I needed to do. It has still kept it as an untitled document. When we send it out, it will update because I've corrected the name. So I guess if I click on it again, let's go in. It's got writing tasks. It's all exactly the same. It's saved for me. I don't need to click save anywhere. Didn't need to choose where to save it either. It's just connected to the assignment, which is nice. So that's that there. Close that off. Now for this one, students can view the file. Now that's not the right permission that I want for this one because I actually want students to be able to edit this one. I can do students edit file. If I change it to students edit file, that means every student is going to get access to this one file and all be typing on at the same time. For this particular task, that's not going to be great either. So I want every student to get their own copy. So I built out the template and now every student will get a copy of that particular task as well. Now I might choose to actually add another bit of content in here. I might put a form in as maybe a bit of an exit slip or something for students to complete once they've finished it.
Yep. Really,
really simple. I can throw the form in there. It might be something that I've already made, so I could choose it from my forms, but for this one, I've created a brand new one. So it might be, let's call it exit slip. I might have some really basic questions around, how challenging typing is challenge for me today. How challenging the chart. I'm missing an N as well. Challenging. There we go. How challenging it was, or how tricky it was. I can have a rating. They can just pop something like that, or it might be something really specific around the task itself and how the language they had to use, or how many adjectives they used, or something around that. Could be specific or could be quite broad, and I can pop that in there as well. So I can label that exit slip. It's updated it for me, which is great, and then I can have that as part of my assignment as well. So I'm building out, I guess, more parts to an assignment rather than just saying, here's a web link, go and have a look. There's a little bit more to it. And for this particular one, they would just click on that and fill that out as they go, which is excellent. So lots of options there. I could then add a link as well. I won't do that today, but I guess you're starting to get the idea of how we can build that out, which is great. Over on the right-hand side, Jared, we've got some options for how we can, I guess, make it a little bit more user-friendly for teachers in terms of points, due dates, topics, and rubrics, that kind of thing. We can send it out to this particular Google Classroom, or if you're a RFF teacher, librarian, if you're a high school teacher and you've got multiple classes, but they're all kind of covering the same thing, or you want them to do the same assignment, I could tick across and go through multiple classes and send it out, which is really, really useful. I can also choose from all students or just particular students. Now, there's only one student in this class, so that's why it only has all students or this particular student, but all your students would pop up here. So really great for that differentiation. You can just send it out to one particular student or a group of students really easily.
Include your accommodations and things of that nature.
Just by having that drop down.
Have some points there. I like it to be out of 100.
Yep. Absolutely, you can put 100. You might have a grading scale of, at, above, below, 1 to 3. You might grade it out of that, or you can completely ungrade it, completely up to you and how the assignment works. We do, I guess, recommend if you're pushing it out as an assignment and all grades or all teachers of a grade or all teachers of a stage are setting the same assignment, have a think about your point system and maybe getting that uniform across all of our grades and stages. We can have a due date. So some teachers don't like to do due dates. I think it's a pretty good idea as students get a little bit older, just to train them into acknowledging when the task is due. If it's a setting it in the class time and it's due in class time, maybe a due date's not so great, but if it's something that's a longer period task, you can put that in there as well. We can add it to topics. So topics is a really great way of organizing our tasks. So if we add it to a topic, this is obviously a writing task, and I might have an English topic or even writing as a topic, and that helps me to organize all my assignments. Because as you get started in Google assignments and Google classwork, it's not so bad. After 6 months, after a year of adding assignments, it starts to get very messy. So adding topics and sorting things and topics from the beginning is really good practice. And also just helps you to keep organized as well. Adding a rubric is fantastic. You can create a rubric. You can reuse a marking rubric that you've already had, which is really great. Or you can actually design it in Google Sheets and import it, which lots of teachers I know love doing that. Makes it a little bit more user-friendly. Let's just quickly have a look at what creating one looks like. We've got the criterion title, so that's just our the name of our rubric. Let's just call it was our writing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We can go down, we can assign points and levels and those sorts of things, and then we can add some criterion down the bottom. So we're going to assign what particular that is, what the points are for that one, and then building it out across.
Yeah. And you've had the pluses to the side. You might have 1 point for low, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is as you.
We build out that one. So this one's a 1 level point. That's a 2. Oops, build that out to 2. Build it out across. This might be 3. So what does a 1 look like? What does a 2 look like? And what does a 3 look like? Really good for students to be able to identify that.
Yep.
I guess we've got it in 2 places now. We're having a rubric as well as our little success criteria on our document itself. I guess you can pick and choose.
Yep.
You might do a bit of both.
One might be the overall for the task, whereas the success criteria might be a little bit low level, maybe.
Yeah, perfect. So you've got that in there. I'm going to click on save. It might not let me because I've added one and haven't labeled it. Let's see if it does. Yeah, it doesn't like that. Got nothing in there. Let's just chuck something in there. And I need another one there. Need some points. I've got to put everything in. It doesn't let me go on until I've added a little bit of something for everything. There we go. So I pop that in there. I've got my rubric in there. So I've got 2 criteria adding up to 4 points. So have a think about these points and these points, how they match up.
Yep.
And just make sure you've got that. One last little tip here for check plagiarism. I guess that's more for our older students.
Yeah.
Especially
it checks for copy and paste in the world of AI these days. Doesn't work with that.
Doesn't work with that because that is generative. It's created on the spot. But I guess it's probably more for our primary students, I guess, who get in the habit of reading a great website and they go, oh, that paragraph is excellent. They copy the whole paragraph of content, put it into their document and say, yes, I wrote this. Yeah. The plagiarism checker will pick that up, that it's just a copy and paste of a whole paragraph from a website. And you can then have a conversation about it and go, okay, actually, did you write all of this yourself? And they go, oh, no, I just copied and pasted. Great conversation. Say, well, this is actually supposed to be our own writing. How could you take that paragraph and then convert it into your own form of information? So a really nice little ticker box there as well. Last little tidbit with our assignments is you can just assign it on the spot, which lots of teachers do choose to do, but we've got our little drop down next to it there, which is really handy. So I can assign and I can schedule it out. So you might be finishing off a task maybe later in the afternoon or in the evening, and you don't want it to pop up for students. They might have devices at home that they're signing to Google Classroom.
Might suddenly feel they need to complete it on the spot.
Not great for an assignment to come through at 9:30 p.m. just maybe before they go to bed. Scheduling it, I can pop that schedule in and I can actually choose the day and the time that comes out. So, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, not a bad time for it to pop in.
Yeah.
So I can schedule it to go out then, and then it has it there ready to go. And that's just waiting to pop out for tomorrow morning, which is excellent. I can always go in to that same assignment. I can go in here and I can edit it and actually decide I want to change that schedule, or oops, I've just clicked it again. Before I click on schedule, go back in, edit, and I can actually change that schedule, do that drop down, and I can change it to now, all those sorts of things. Or I might go, oh, actually, I need to push that lesson back. I'm not, something's changed. I'm not in there tomorrow morning. I'll change it to the next day or later in the day as well. So you've got that flexibility.
Very versatile.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else you want to throw in there for our...
Not for assignments. The only thing is with the next thing we were planning to talk about, which is Google practice sets. It has not appeared for us in this browser. Let me just, that shouldn't be an issue.
Could be because we're in a test account, maybe.
I believe it is because we're in a test account. In a teacher's account, here in classwork, we would see as an option when we hit create, there would be one here called practice sets. Well, we actually choose an assignment, and one of the options here should say practice set. Now, for whatever reason today, it is not popping up on the screen. We may have time to circle back to it in a later video. Let me just quickly try. This is probably going to be logged in as a student. Oh, no, there we go. So we're in a slightly different account for this. So we've jumped out of our test account. But let me go into 6BP account, go to classwork. And now when we say create an assignment, you're going to see the option here. It says practice sets.
It is new.
It is brand new. It hasn't been out a few weeks. Practice sets is really cool. I quite like it. So yes, give it a title, give it some options. I'm just going to put in some text for now as an example, but open practice sets. One of the things I like about it, it's a little bit like a self-marking form, but it's got some working out space and it's also got support material. So it is designed to be really independent activity for our students. So I'm going to create a new practice set. And when it pops up, we need to give our practice set a name. Here it comes. So our untitled practice set, you might just call it, I don't know, week 3, whatever it is. And say we have a question might be 32 times 5 equals, right? That's the question. We can make it short answer. We need to put the correct answer in. My maths is not that good off the top of my head, so let's just make it 20 times 5. So we know the answer is 100 is the correct answer. And we can actually search for something that might help students answer this. So maybe Adam, we type in multiple digit multiplication. Is it searching? Usually a lot of search, put a space. Oh, here we go. So here relates problem using arrays, multiplication problems in area, associative property. Maybe do multiplication, type in the word multiple digits. Here we go. So multiplication, multiple numbers. I can select that as an area of skill that might support the students in answering this question. Perfect. You know, I could add a new question and it could be whatever it is you might want to do. Maybe we'll do 2 plus 5 times 3 minus 1, the good old board maths question, equals, what's that, 15? It's 16, isn't it? Off the top of my head, hopefully get that right. Don't go easy on the comment, get that wrong.
I can see him popping up now.
Yeah. So I can see straight away, it's understood that it's some sort of algebraic equation or a multi-step linear equation. Maybe type in order of operations. It doesn't come up as a suggestion. The back-end AI is not bad for this. Here we go. Apply the order of operations. So let's say that you can also import questions, and we'll look at that in a moment. The importing is okay, it's not too bad, but let me show you what it looks like. If I say try it for students, this is what the student view is going to look like.
So I guess it's a really great opportunity to just see how that would work. So if it's the very first time using it, which being very new for most people is going to be the first time they're using it, good to see what the students see, have a little bit of a play. I guess if you're doing this as a staff, set an assignment, set a practice set for another teacher and vice versa, and have a little bit of a play. So fill it out, see what the response looks like for each of you, and just have that kind of experience time to see how it's going to flow rather than just diving straight in with your students. Sometimes that can get a little bit messy. So good to see how that workflow works for you.
Now, the biggest benefit, you might be saying, hey, this is just a Google form. What's the difference between this? The biggest thing for me is the working out space. So in a Google form, it's quite often multiple choice, and you can't see the students working out. This one, we can see students with their working out, self-marking, and it gives them support material. So if I go in here, I could put the answer right in here, but I need to work it out first. If I say, show my work, I get a space. I can click on a little squiggly line and I can type in, it was 20 times 5, whatever it is, whatever method of multiplication that I might need to do. I should probably put it here, shouldn't I? Grab my little rubber, rub that out, grab my pen, and I can answer. There we go. You can see that's 100. And then what the student can do, can scroll up and go, I got the answer of 100. And it picked it up as 100. I can check it, and it's going to give me the big green tick to say that, yes, I got that right. So I get immediate feedback as the student that I've got it right, and I can progress on to my next question. Likewise here, I could write the answer straight in. You can type it if you turn the pen off, but again, show you working out. A little space so I can see exactly what the student, unless I get to this point and go, oh, I don't know how to answer this. I've got this little light bulb. it's going to give me a hint.
I guess that light bulb, Jared, that was, as the teacher when we were seeing the practice set, that was us identifying what the type of question it was, so that the light bulb, I guess, is pulling on the right information.
100%. That's exactly right. And if this little light bulb, it gives me a quick suggestion. If I go, you know what, that's not really helping me enough, I can click on here. It says extra help. And the little ribbon on the side is going to open up, and instantly I've got access to free online. Now, these are drawn from YouTube, but the Khan Academy stuff's pretty good. And a student can click on that, and the video will play. For some reason, my video is not playing right now, probably because of something we're doing in this call. But yeah, it should allow a video to play. It's not playing for me, but it does work. I haven't used it many times. But the best thing is students can help themselves. They don't need to come to you as the teacher for support. They can watch the video and then hopefully apply what that video shows, do their working out, draw the parentheses, get the right answer. You know, and let's put in an answer that I know is wrong, and I hit check. I'm going to get try again, and that's when you see these little, hey, do you need help? So it's guiding them towards that self-help area. So that's Google Practice Sets. It is a pretty cool little program. I can jump back into my classwork because that was just me trying that as a student. I can say done. It adds it to the assignment, which I'm going to attach. Instantly, it's an extra level to your assignment. As you can see there, practice set. I'll have my instructions. Who's it going to send?
Perfect. And I guess you've got all those other attachments. You can have something from your drive that maybe reminds them of those order of operations. That could be a document that's attached to it.
Yes.
Or it might be, you know, multiple questions with a couple of practice set questions. Maybe the practice set is the more formative assessment aspect. So you're getting them to fill a whole bunch of questions in their book, and then maybe 3 or 4 practice sets for them to show, so that you've got that stored digitally. Again, pulling it back to the idea that we're all in the cloud. When I am wanting to assess my students or do some maybe a parent-teacher interview, or I'm doing reports, I want to be able to pull up the content that they've done really quickly and easily. If it's in their book, that's great. It's not quick and easy to access. There's 25, 30 books. I've got to find the right page. I've got to, you know, figure out whether it's been checked and all those sorts of things. Whereas with the practice sets, I can bring up the assignments. I can flick through each student nice and quickly, and I can get a really good feed, and I can actually see their working out, which is something I think you called out that was always missing from capturing digital representations. If they've done a multiple choice question and they've got it right, there's a 1 in 4 chance that it was a great guess. Whereas with this, you know that they've actually had to type in the number or physically write it. Great for touch screens. I know a lot of our new T4L devices are pretty much all touch screens for students. And if they're allowed a stylus, even better.
But they can use the finger or the mouse. And like exactly what Adam said, I can go in here. I've got my insights. I can look at what the student, like, see the work that they've done, look at their working out, and I can just click through each student rather than go to the book, to the right page, and answer that. But the last thing we want to talk about today, seeing as we're in the cloud, all our files exist in the cloud, and kind of on this same idea of reviewing their work in an assignment, how can we get students to showcase what they've done to meet maybe certain learning goals? And to do that is probably creating a student learning portfolio.
Absolutely.
Now, we do have an example one here, don't we, Adam, of a way that the students can build their own learning portfolio. You might use it as you, the teacher, to when you are writing their report. This example could also be sent out to parents to show them what the student has achieved. But yeah, it's also accessible to anybody else that might need that. So we've got this set up as a Google site, is that right? Yeah,
so I guess it's a couple of different ways of doing this within the Google ecosystem. I think Google Sites is a beautiful way of doing it.
It's really good.
Really simple for creation. I guess whenever people hear a website, they go, oh, that sounds a bit complicated. I'm not going to, I don't have website building skills. Google Sites, I'd probably say, is just a slight step more than building a slide deck, like a PowerPoint or a Google slide. It's very, very simple. Yeah, drop and drag, have links in there, those sorts of things. This is an example of a version of something that actually one of our excellent teachers out there has actually created, which is awesome. So it's actually sitting within our website. They've got all their key learning areas or learning spaces at the top. They've divided it into terms, so you can see it's really easy to navigate, easy for the students to figure out where things belong.
Students build their own, right?
Oh, they absolutely built it themselves. Yeah. So it could be something that a teacher creates and then maybe pushes out as a template or shares it. We would always advise having the student and the teacher as an editor of this space. So I wouldn't have students creating websites that aren't visible to teachers with those sorts of things. Do they have the ability to do that themselves? Yes. But for a learning portfolio, definitely have the teacher available for a couple of reasons. One is just for that visibility. Two, it's an excellent place to have something like a teacher comment. So a teacher could come in here, or myself as a teacher, if I was in edit mode, I could come in here and actually leave my comment about that particular work sample. So it could be some great feedback for them. It might be just be some positive reinforcement. They might not be looking for actual learning feedback, but it just might be like, I really love how you structured that sentence. Excellent. Or it might be, I really love that creation. So this is just, I guess, showcasing a few different items that can really easily be added.
Probably what a student might be proud of. What do they want to show? Or they might structure, you might have very specific learning goals, and the student finds some evidence to support how they've achieved that learning goal.
Absolutely. So for example, we've got a link here to a bit of coding that the students might have done, and that links out to the end product they created. Really excellent for the teacher to see, also for parents and families. This is a video they might have made. They've got the video stored in the Google Drive or in a Google shared space. And we've dropped that in there as well for them to be able to view. There's some links out. So Google Jamboard is a really excellent tool within the Google ecosystem. That's linking out to a task that was happening on the Jamboard. This is just a PDF. So they've uploaded a picture of a PDF, something they've interacted with, and they might respond to it on here as well. This one here is a Google Doc. So they've got the Google Doc and it's been embedded into this site. Something they've worked on, might have been in a Google Classroom assignment that they actually had to do. But they've dropped in here as a representation of a task that they've done when they were working on information texts and those sorts of things. Then we could add that teacher content. We've got a large PDF document, so that might be something bigger that they worked on, multiple pages, so you can scroll all the way down through all of that kind of content, and they might have been demonstrating some learning and money and those sorts of things. Scrolling even further down, they might have interacted with a particular text and they've responded to that text, or they've had some information around it. There's a maths task that they might have interacted with as well, all the way down to even having their own form that they fill out. So it might be their own reflective learning journal. It might be something the teacher wants them to respond to each time, or it could be a reflection on the learning journal. So it could be for their parents to interact with and actually respond in a form or something like that. This one's obviously science-based around different, birds and those sorts of things, but it could be the form could be around anything. So I guess what we're kind of trying to show here is the possibilities, not so much this is what it should look like, but the possibilities of all the different things we can pull on because they're stored in that cloud
environment. Because they're in the cloud environment. How can we present that? What's our audience? And how can we easily, otherwise you have to click in and out of so many files. This is a nice little showcase of what a student has achieved. And it's a new skill for them. They're going to have to probably do this in their life, in the workforce. So why not start them now?
Absolutely.
In school? And there's more options you can do. This is Google site, brilliant way to do it. I strongly recommend this one. Easy to share with parents, friends, teachers. It could be a OneNote. It could be a Google slide document. So many different options for students to.
I think we do have a Google slide one up here as well. Actually.
Oh, there is a Google slide version. Yes.
Yep. So Google Slides, again, if you're familiar with Google, excellent. If you're not, very much like PowerPoint in terms of a slide-based presentation. This one here.
We had some hyperlinks, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can actually connect, rather than connecting hyperlinks to, say, an external source, like a website or something like that, you can actually hyperlink within the slide deck itself. So being a digital portfolio, it might start off really small like this, with only a few kind of items in here, but you can imagine by halfway through the year, or if you're using it frequently, maybe they're adding one item a week. That's going to still end up with 30, 40 items in there. It's going to get pretty busy, and you don't want to be scrolling forever. So you might go, okay, let's have a title page that maybe is English, and then all the English slides sit below that. To be able to do that, we've actually hyperlinked, say, the English section or maybe the math section there, and I click on that, and then it says take me to the math slide. So I click on there, takes me straight down to that math section, and then I might have 5, 6, 7, 8 pages all about their math learning throughout the a
little home button to jump you back if required.
Absolutely. Click on that, and then I can go back to the home button. So almost like building out a website, but you're using something really simple like a slide-based presentation, which I know students are very familiar with. Teachers are very comfortable in that kind of slide-based presentation space, but just, I guess, upskilling and adding a few little features to it.
Harness where your files now live in the cloud to present it to everybody. So that brings us to the end of what we wanted to show you. Hopefully you got an idea about how to bring your slides together into a consolidated space. How you might use assignments a little bit better, have a bit of a go at practice sets, maybe a digital learning portfolio and harness the use of your files in the cloud. Next video, we're going to look at refining. What are some of those really top end things we can do in the space to move you to the next level? This is, if you are watching this as an online webinar, please ask your questions in the chat. Someone will answer you.
Absolutely.
And if you're online, if you're watching this somewhere down the track and you're watching this as a recording, a couple of email addresses there if you want to reach out to anyone for further support in this space.
Perfect. And definitely dive into that chat. Any resources, I guess, that we mentioned, some of those websites, they'll all be popped out to you as well. But definitely worth, I guess, this consolidation time is a bit tricky. And like I said, it's usually a point in time where we start to pull it together. And it's a time where you want to explore what that Google Classroom can really offer in terms of efficiencies, storing that content where it's really accessible on any device, no matter what room you go into. You can jump onto the main learning display, onto your laptop, on an iPad at home. It's all really accessible. The students definitely ups the level of engagement, I feel, when you're kind of giving them a bit of ownership over their learning, utilizing some of these tools. And
so you might want to do all these things that we talked about in this video at once. You might choose one or two to do now. It's all when you have time and capacity. But that's all we have for you in this session. There is another one to follow. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you later.